My dear students, after the application process, the next very important step is the pre-employment testing. So we have to discuss the pre-employment testing and the different concepts revolving around the pre-employment testing. How pre-employment tests are used? Employers typically use pre-employment tests to accomplish two primary objectives. So what are those two primary objectives which need to be accomplished via pre-employment testing? First objective can be eliciting an applicant's undesirable traits and identifying characteristics that most closely match the qualities required in the available job. Very clear. Its purpose is to elicit the applicant's undesirable traits. If some applicants have a traits which are not desirable at the job, so you can determine such kind of traits through a pre-employment test. And second, you can identify the characteristics that most closely to the qualities required in the job. So you want to identify those traits, those characteristics which are very helpful in performing the job in the best manner. So this is the primary objectives which need to be achieved while pre-employment testing. And the second objective is very specific, that tests given to the prospective employers may help to identify a number of the factors which we are going to discuss in the next slides. So you have to identify a number of the factors in the pre-employment testing which make your selection decision more accurate, more reliable, and more valid. So what are those factors? Number one, predict acceptable or unacceptable on the job behavior. So testing is not only to predict the acceptable behavior. Sometimes unacceptable behaviors need to be determined through testing. What kind of behaviors are more required on the job? Number two, it minimize or eliminate bias in the interview and selection process. It is not possible to eliminate the bias. Bias is always there in the interview and the selection process. But you as a selector can minimize the bias in the interview and selection process, and pre-employment testing is more helpful tool in minimizing the bias in the interview and the selection process. So before going to the interview and the further selection process, you have to go for some kind of employment testing. Number three, allow employers to identify potentially unfit workers. Sometimes some workers are quite unfit in the job, and testing can allow employers to identify those unfit workers. So if the workers are unfit, obviously don't ask them to come for the further selection process, because it would waste your time, it would waste your money as well. So better to eliminate such kind of unfit workers in the employment testing process. Number four, identify responsible individuals. Those individuals who are capable of working under certain working conditions. So you have to identify most responsible working behaviors, most responsible workers in the organizations. Number five, very important in the selection process. Employment testing reduce the cost of recruiting, hiring, and training. So if you would do employment testing, it can reduce your cost in all of the steps, not only in recruitment, but also in the hiring and the training. So you think that that particular person needs more training, so you would avoid such kind of persons in the employment testing. And it would reduce your cost of training to train such kind of workers who need more potential trainings. Number six, it identifies future superstars. Sometimes there are superstars in the selection process, and employment testing can identify those superstars. So you should not avoid such kind of superstars in the selection process, and employment testing would provide you the way that how to identify the superstars. And number seven, it identifies additional job factor that should be taken into account. So employment testing is not only revolving around the core competencies, but it also helps to identify the factors which make someone more successful in the job. And number eight, it safeguards against so-called professional applicants who pride themselves on being able to mislead interviewer. Sometimes some people are over smart. They are so-called professionals and they can mislead interviewers. So employment testing can help to safeguard against so-called professionals, and they may eliminate those so-called professionals in the employment testing process. And number 9, it identifies workers who will need extra assistance or training. So if someone needs extra training, extra assistance, that can be identified in the employment testing. And number 10, not last but least, flush out factors that could prove to be detrimental on the job. So there are some factors which are very detrimental on the job. So such kind of factors can be identified through employment testing. So pre-employment testing is quite important steps in the overall selection process, and you as a selector need to put more focus on such kind of steps, and you need to identify different kind of the applicants through pre-employment testing, so you can make your selection process more efficient and effective.